All right, we'll get started. Thanks everyone for coming out and school district for walking across the street and joining us today. So the time is now 3:30 p.m. I call to order this special meeting of the Budget, Finance, and Administration Committee. Today's date's April 29th, 2025. I'll just begin with a moment of silence. Mr. Root, would you pray for us?
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you'd like to. Oh, dearest Father, thank you for this day that you've given us, that you've gifted to us. And we're appreciative. Help us to have grateful hearts, to not take even the littlest things for granted, to acknowledge you and be aware and mindful of the many blessings you give us, one of which is to meet together to do business. And as we meet during this committee to do financial business, I know your word stresses the importance of being good stewards. Help us to do that. Help council to have a vision to show the priorities of the county through the budget, and its implementation would be smooth, and your will would be done in this county. I pray in your name. Amen.
Ms. Holder, would you lead us in the pledge?
Salute, pledge.
Next, we have approval of the April 15th, 2025 regular minutes.
Second.
I have a motion seconded by Mr. Hart. Any changes or discussions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Right, now we have discussion items. We'll start off with the school district, discussing their budget discussion. We used up all of our time last week. Got a great presentation from them. We just asked them to come back if anyone had any questions, or to kind of continue the discussion where we left off. So we was discussing last week, and we met, me and Tommy's met with Mr. Thorson and Mrs. Chickling last week, and we was discussing how we transferred 1.4 mils last year to the school district to avoid a tax increase. We're discussing how we'd like to get that 1.4 mils back when considering the substantial fund balance the school district's sitting on, 37 million, which is over 27% of their operating budget. And I met with Mr. Thorson. I asked him about what percentage of the overages, they collected a significant amount of over budgeted revenue. If you go back and look total state and local, I think it's about $28 million over about the last 3 years. I asked Mr. Thorson if what did they do? Did they put that in one-time expenses? Did they roll that into reoccurring expenses? And Mr. Thorson stated they put most of that in one-time expenses each year, some buses and things of that nature. So that's kind of where we was at. It's kind of some information I've gained since then. Go ahead.
Have there been any changes to this document from the last time we met?
Yes, sir, there is one change. Based upon some of the questions about what constitutes an administrative cost, I went back and had some conversations with my counterparts, and we've moved the staffing positions of monitors from an administrative to an instructive position. So there would be a slight increase to the instructional budget and a slight decrease to what we would call general building administration.
And I can explain what a monitor is. A couple of years ago, the state legislature passed a law that said all teachers have to have a mandatory 30 minutes of unoccupied time. We had a lot of elementary teachers, particularly around the state, complaining that they didn't even have time to go to the restroom. I don't think that was necessarily a concern here locally, but statewide, that was a concern. Legislature passed a law saying you have to give every teacher in every building a minimum of 30 minutes of time. And it can't be meeting time or duty time. It has to be time for planning and time for a teacher to do what they need to do. So to ensure that, we hired monitors, which are not certified teachers, but they're employees that come in. Our schools deploy those people two different ways. They either deploy them in the cafeteria so that teachers don't have to be on lunch duty, so that lunch duty is their time to get that 30 minutes, or some of our schools put those folks on recess duty so that when teachers send their classes out to recess, they get that 30-minute time there. So that was an additional expense to our budget a few years ago, and that's who Mr. Schickling was referring to, just as far as where we budget those expenses. So, small change, not to the overall budget, but just in accounting within the budget.
Yeah, total figures have not been modified.
Do they pick up on the microphone from there?
Yeah, usually not quite as loud as we do.
I want to ask you to repeat it, I just wanted to make sure. So, it's kind of based on some studies we've done on what we estimate the value of the mill to be. It looks like to cover your operating budget as presented would be a pretty substantial millage increase, tax increase on top of the 1.4 mils from last year. And I think we need to be able to justify that. You're sitting on such a large fund balance and such an over-collection of previous years in order to be able to pass that increase on to the taxpayers.
So I guess one of my responses would be the overcollection in previous years. Overcollection is not something the school district controls. We are in the state, of course, we discussed last week, the way it works is we bring a dollar figure to you that we think it will take to run our system the way our community expects us to run it. And we bring that dollar figure, and then it's outside of our control what the millage levy is and how much is collected, because that's just not done in our office. We don't control that. So I'm not disputing you in saying that we did overcollect, but that's not something that we have any purview over, really. That's the millage is set here, and so we're bringing a dollar figure that we think internally as district staff. We developed a budget over the last 2 or 3 months. We've been presenting that to our board, and our board has approved that request on first reading. Of course, it's up to y'all, but while we did overcollect and we reacted based on those overcollections, we did, just to be perfectly transparent, we did overspend some of those years as well. So our expenditure budget ended up being higher than we anticipated. But I think we said last time, if you track this year's collections, we anticipate under-collecting by a little bit this year. So we don't think that over-collection is going to continue.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would note, if you look, there's a historical budget performance. And if you track the performance of the budget from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23, the fund balance itself as a aggregate dollar figure was decreased by 500,000. So we call that flat, even. That resulted in over a 3-point reduction in our fund balance to budget, which is what our policy governs. And so, the proposal to operate under a planned deficit budget, I think the concern would be that we would be driving that number further down. That would be close to the policy limits. But We also have some principles of fiscal management, and they're based upon Moody's bond rating criteria. And one of Moody's bond rating criteria that they use to evaluate the fiscal performance of a school district is maintaining revenues that are in a surplus status to expenditures. So if we were to budget a planned deficit of $2 to $3 million, or in that range, which is the variable that we're speaking to, you know, the concern there is that we would violate that metric in the eyes of our bond rating agency in order to erode our fund balance. I think then what you've got is you've got a structural imbalance between revenues and expenditures. So another tenet of those fiscal management principles is on an annual basis, matching your revenues to your expenditures. And if we don't do that, then we would carry forward a $3 million deficit. Then the request would be necessary to reimburse the $3 million and then bring forward an additional request beyond that. And that would be the nature of compounding numbers over time, which is why we aim not to have a structural deficiency.
Yeah, I mean, I see, you know, each year, I've got notes on two. I mean, 24, 8.7 over budget collected, but you overspent 4.5. I guess as you got more revenue, you found. That's that
Some of
one-time
those-
capital you'll talk about investing in.
Some of those one-time expenditures, yes.
Yeah, $2.25 million would be the investment of our fund balance into a pledge to the YMCA for their Phase 2 capital.
And then 23, 6.8 million over expenditures, but you collected 9.1 over. And we talked about this just a few minutes ago, and I don't, so the rest of council knows too. Would y'all be interested, we talked about 1.4 mil that we transferred, because we didn't want to give a tax increase last minute. I think it's important for the county to know that to fund y'all's operating budget as requested now would require a tax increase, right, unless something dramatically changes in the next few
Yeah,
months.
so we, you know, when we put together a budget, again, we don't have access to the projected assessment values. So in constructing a budget, we've looked at a 4-year trend. Now, the 4-year trend for growth and assessments is an average of 5.75%. And that's the operating millage of the school district. The lowest year of those was 3.92%. So when we're looking at a 5.75% growth, if that were to match the norm of the past 4 years, we would be in line with about a 110 to 111 in that range in terms of a mill value. Or I'm sorry, the millage rate. But the projection is for 0.6% in growth. And so I can't speak to whether that is what we should anticipate looking at the history. But yes, then if there's no growth, then an increase would be required.
But I will say, I think I mentioned this last time, we have tried to be frugal in previous years because of this conversation of trying to keep millage flat or maybe slightly lower, and millage has gone down as a result. And maybe we didn't fund our budget the way we felt like we should or what we wanted to do in an attempt to do that. And then between this time of year, April, May, and September, the projected value of a mill goes up, and then it reduces our millage value. And again, we just talk about, and I think y'all would acknowledge, nobody cares when the millage value goes down. You don't get a pat on the back or anything like that. But then the next year, it's expected to stay at that lower value, and it can't keep going that way.
Yeah, and you know, we're forward-looking as well, so, you know, you can see that the amount of revenue variance is decreasing. Part of the generation of excess revenue is the interest rate environment. So we're concerned that the interest rate environment is going to change and don't want to have programmed expenditures that would be funded by interest that does not materialize.
Right, and I think probably the county and the school district have both benefited from that to the tune of probably 7 figures over the past few years with high interest rates. But I think there are maybe 4 planned Fed cuts for this year. If it goes like maybe what's being anticipated. So that interest, instead of being $1 million, $2 million in our revenue, that could be cut significantly. So, yeah.
So we discussed just prior to this meeting, so the rest of the council knows. The school district has a complex borrowing plan, much more complex than what we see, what we deal with, and they borrow every year for a building program. And what my ask was, would they be willing to borrow less this year, about $1 million less, so we could get the 1.4 mil back from that, and, and approve their operating budget? And, Mr. Thorson said he'd have to talk with the board, but will you take that to your board the next meeting?
Sure, and that's something I was sharing with Mr. Durham. Mr. Schicklinger and I are here representing the school district. However, a decision like that is made by the school board, so I certainly can't say, oh, yeah, we'll be happy to drop our capital millage, because that's a decision only the school board can make. And even though 2 of them are here today, it takes 3 of them and a published meeting to take any kind of action. So we'll certainly be happy to discuss that, but that would take agreement from the school board before I could commit to that.
Yeah, because I look at it as you do have a healthy fund balance.
We do.
If you save that 1.4 mil, if you borrow less and pay for that out of your fund balance for capital improvement, which that's generally what fund balance should be used for.
Sure.
To keep that at a healthy level, because healthy also is not growing above 30%,
Sure.
You don't overtax to save money. So if you would take that to the school board Monday, is y'all next meeting Monday?
The 12th.
And then report that back to us, that would be.
So I do think that your first reading is scheduled before our next board meeting. I think you meet on May 7th. We don't meet until May 12th, so it would be following the 12th before I could report back on that.
Our next meeting's what, the 6th? May 6th.
Reading is on the 6th, second reading is on May 20th, which means. we
Okay,
can
so
amend your
6th,
first
not
reading.
7th, sorry.
So you don't have a budget, you don't have a meeting on the 5th?
We don't. We meet on the 12th, second Monday.
I thought y'all met the same schedule we did just the day before. Would y'all be willing to have a special meeting?
I can poll the board members, but I don't.
We can amend the budget, second May.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Ms. Price and I just confirmed that we could change first reading for school district budget to May 20th, which would give you time to have your meeting, have their second reading, first meeting of June, and then their third meeting in June.
Well, we only have one meeting in June.
Oh, that's correct.
Can
I'm
we-
having
Can we
two.
amend the
I should
budget,
invite y'all.
second reading?
Sir?
Can we amend the budget, second reading?
Yes.
We've always taken that. We've always had that understanding that our board could certainly amend the budget on second reading or third reading. It's just they've given first reading approval, so.
Yeah, the legislature is still working their way through our budget. So
Yeah.
I learned late last week that there was an employer increase to the healthcare contribution rate that we had not priced into our budget. But we have not changed our budget because we believe we can absorb that. So, things are fluid.
So if the board's willing and can have a meeting before the 6th, I understand we all have schedules too. It's hard for us to change. It's hard for us to fit this one in.
Sure.
That would be great. If not, then we'll just take first reading as is and
And then
adjust accordingly.
we can report, well, we would report back to you before your second reading. And then you can take appropriate action from there.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I got one question. How much does it cost a year for one student to be educated?
Our our average expenditure is roughly 13,000.
What I'd worked out, something like that. That's my question.
Sir?
I've got one question. Yeah, as far as like enrollment, what do y'all expect next year? Do you have those numbers? Do you expect it to be more or less level?
It's been very level for actually 60-plus years in Oconee County. I think it's an interesting statistic that when Duke Power was being built, our county was roughly 40,000 citizens. 10,000 of those citizens were in our school system. Now we're almost double that, or maybe a little more than double that. Still have about 10,000 students. So the growth in Oconee County over the years has been retired population primarily.
Yeah.
I think that's compounded by the fact that families today just don't have as many kids. But we anticipate over that 60-year period between 9,900, 10,500 almost every year. So we anticipate that.
I did, in our initial presentation, we do utilize a formula to staff our classroom allocations. Our associate superintendent, Mr. Hanvey, runs that calculation, then meets with principals and forecasts, this is how many staff you would have to work with next year. So there is a slight and gradual downward trend that would lead to a reduction of 5 classroom teachers that's priced into the budget. So that and more stringent application of maximum caseloads for special education leads to a reduction in special education as well. So we've got a reduction of 9 certified positions and then a reduction of 1 position in facilities and 1 in technology. So there is some attrition priced into the budget. That's why the salary growth is roughly 3% rather than maybe 3.5 or 4.
Is the student growth, or not the student growth, but the enrollment per zone, has it shifted?
It has.
Yeah.
Very much so. We've talked about that in the last few weeks. So I've been in the district about 20 years, and within that 20-year time frame, the 3 high schools we have all taken turns being the largest high school with student population. But right now, for the last 3 or 4 years, the West Oak area has had fewer students. We're noticing that from 4K, our projections for 4K next year, all the way up to the senior class. The senior class at West Oak right now is like 124, smallest I remember it ever being. So currently, there's kind of been a shift downward for West Oak and perhaps up a little bit in Walhalla and Seneca. But that, again, has ebbed and flowed across the 3 major attendance areas. And right now, West Oak's just kind of in a low point. But still within that 9,900 to 10,500 overall student population, we've not deviated from that at this point.
And that counts probably K4, right? We didn't always have K4 or K5, really, if you go back that far.
Yeah, we're still kind of within those bounds, but you're right. We do have 19 4K programs at about 20 students per, so that does add, 370, 380 students to our overall student population that maybe 30 years ago they weren't there.
Anybody else, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, more of a statement. I saw just today, there's a bill in the House which will require every school district to have oversight from the county. Not all school districts in the state have to have their budget approved by the
right.
county. And I think this is good. I think oversight in total is good. And I'm glad that Oconee County we do it.
It's about 25% of school districts go to county council for final approval of their budget, but I think it's about 75% that do not. And those numbers could be off because some of those change from year to year, but that's general. Thank you.
Get back with us on what the school board.
Definitely do. And I think I understand your request. You're essentially asking that we might move some of our unallocated fund balance to the capital program so that our capital millage would be slightly lower to compensate for that 1.4 mills. Okay. We can talk to the school board about that.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we'll move to our budget. Ms. Amanda Brock, if you want to kick us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board Budget, Finance, and Administration Committee. And I did have paper copies of the PowerPoint just in case we didn't get around to getting finalized solutions. I did take some liberties since our last meeting though, and actually plug in some of the recommendations into the current budget, so if there are any we want to take out or handpick for further discussion, please stop me at any time and let me know. It's also up on the screen for everyone's viewing pleasure. Extra copies for your meeting. All right, so there were some discussion items, there were a few things we went through when we were working on your annual strategic plan meeting. And then a few things we were working through, notes from previous year's budgets, deep dive down into some of the things we're currently looking at as our largest and most significant challenges, and how to look at things a little differently in scope as far as special revenue funds, not always special millage funds. So over let's see, yes, that's perfect, thanks. So over the past 5 decades, Oconee County's health insurance has been self-funded as we are self-insured. Those rates for employees have always been relatively stable and extremely low. Last year, when we did the comp and wage study, we came in flying colors, leaps and bounds above any of our neighboring agencies and anyone in the study field. In order for the county to keep up with the cost and the ever-increasing cost of healthcare, we're going to have to look at some different options. Our healthcare option has a great benefit for all employees and family members while you're here. But once you leave, if you're not grandfathered in and having been hired before 2005, that benefit terminates effective 30 days after your departure, which is very, very difficult for specifically law enforcement and fire. Law enforcement officers are going after the long-haul benefit. Sheriff Crenshaw and I met. I know that we've met with Mr. James, Mr. Durham. I think I brought this to you more than once, but then we start digging into the deep dive, not just the benefit to the employer, to the county itself. But I pulled our insurance history, and Ms. Price did for me. Just over the past 5 years, the county has been claims have been over what was budgeted by about $7 million. In order for us to keep up with the pace of cost and the increased cost of healthcare, our rates under our current plan would have to be more than 104 times what the current employee pays, which would not be an option for any employee. So we have a committee put together now for the review of services related to our benefit administrator, our broker who does it. And once we get that done, we'll bring that back to council. And what that person will be charged with doing is hitting the street and helping us find plans that would work better for us. PIBA will be a benchmark for us, which is the state retirement. State retirement is used by a majority of counties. Counties our size, we found through PIBA, have been converting to PIBA over the last 10 years, simply based on exactly what we were facing over this period of time too. So what I'd like to do is for y'all to give me the head nod, thumbs up, high five to us to keep working toward looking for a different type of insurance, always using PIBA as sort of a benchmark, because that after employment benefit is a very strong recruitment tool in areas where recruiting can be critical for a fire sheriff specifically.
Yeah, I think keep going. Like you mentioned, fire and sheriff is a big benefit, allows the sheriff to get deputies with experience who don't want to leave the agency they're at because they moved in the insurance transfer.
I don't want anyone from the highway patrol listening right now, but he told me that he felt like he could get some of our officers that have left and gone to highway patrol to come back.
And then even like we spoke earlier, we're looking for an assistant planner and having a hard time finding one. Maybe there's someone in another county who's on that program who would be interested if they could keep that same insurance.
So the benefit for the spousal, carrying the spouse after 20 years, I think that's a really, really big draw too. Having the ability for both husband and wife to have a benefit after post-employment.
And I know we're early in it, and I think you just gotta investigate all options, but one thing I don't want us to do is to adopt a program that's gonna be a substantial cost increase on the employees. Cause we work hard to get pay up, and we don't want
Correct.
insurance.
Correct.
There's nothing more defeating than to get a pay raise and the insurance take it all.
Yes, or more. Or more,
Been there, done that.
yes. And there may be a point where, you know, what we've been funding and what we've been funding for overages has to be evaluated better and say, okay, well, at one point, we were overfunding in, say, budget year 2023, $2.172 million. There may be an opportunity for the county council, county administrators, sit down and say, okay, what percentage of that overage, because we have to pay every dime of overages, where on PIBA you don't have to pay every dime of overages because there's a pool. What percent of that can we apply back to the pool, so to speak, to reduce that employee cost?
Premiums, yeah.
Yes.
So if we went on PIBA, would we do it January 1?
We would.
So we'd have half a year like.
We would. The greatest thing that I learned about the conversion, if we're looking at doing a solid conversion to PIBA, is every single employee, anybody currently on the county's health plan is grandfathered to the exact day, hour, and time that we convert. Every bit of their tenure goes with them.
So if you got 10 years with the county, you got 10 years invested in people.
And if you've got 20 years with the county and your spouse was on the current health plan, you're eligible. The grandfathering, I think, would be the largest significant component, so that we're not all starting at ground zero or scratch. There's a lot more work to be done with this. I just wanted to bring it forth. We did sign a short-year contract with current benefit administrators for the PAI program that we have now. Our broker is well aware that we are out shopping the market. I do want to be completely transparent about it with everybody. If I had numbers in front of me right now, I would provide you those numbers. We just don't have them yet.
We have enough time to make that decision before.
Yes, sir.
the budgets?
Yes, sir. It's a little quicker than I would really want to do it, but it doesn't mean we can't do it.
And there'll be savings that we don't realize right now in the fact that you have employees with 15 years who decide to stay because they know they can have insurance when they retire. So the reduced turnover cost.
That is the number one complaint I get from employees typically. It's not usually anything regarding, now, you know, we've addressed pay for 6 years consecutively, and last year in a more monumental way, not just a cost of living increase. And now that the pay is where everybody is realizing that we're on market and on par, the benefits portion, we're not on market anymore. Our county benefits are excellent while you're a county employee. Too good is what our Evergreen consultant said. But they disappeared at the snap of a finger the minute you don't work here any longer. And for anybody that's been here less than 8 years and they're not vested in the retirement system, there's nothing we can dangle in front of them to incentivize them to stay.
Is any of the municipalities in the county on PIBA? Walhalla, Seneca?
Walhalla is on PIBA, and Walhalla pays employee benefit, not family coverage, not spouse coverage. Westminster, I believe, is on PIBA. If I read the document today correctly, they must cover a portion of it. Seneca is self-insured.
How many employees do we have that's a contract or part-time?
So part-time employees would be allowed if they got more than 29.5 hours, because under the Obamacare rules and laws still matter. But the contract employees, like the parks for the seasonal, they would not be transferring onto that.
Let's say somebody that works at the landfill that's through employment furnishing.
No, sir, those are not county employees, and they would not be eligible.
How many of them do we have?
Total part-time countywide? You have your current year budget book with you?
It's not that big a thing.
I'm thinking it's
but I mean,
29.
We got 10, 20, 30.
I'm thinking it's right at 30.
Okay.
And that includes seasonal, which, you know, they only work during the summer months.
Is the PIBA plan, is it kind of universal, or is it a market where you pick what fits right for you? Like what I'm saying,
There
is
are
the school
options.
district and the city of Walhalla plan offer the same?
Because school district would be considered a large group, they get a different set of options. So City of Walhalla, because they would be considered a smaller group, so they're like in tiers, just like everything
550
else.
employees, will that be a small group or
We're a large group. And apparently, we may be quite attractive out on the market, because I hear insurance pays quite well.
So one thing that noted in the school district's presentation the last time was that their share of benefits and their own people had increased significantly right the last few years. I don't remember those numbers. That's kind of something to be aware of too if we move forward. Do we move now and we think it's good, but it's just gonna eat us up? And then once you go on the PEBA system, can you get back out of it?
You have to commit to a 3-year period.
There's 29 in last year's.
29 on the dot.
So was the county on people before they went self-insured?
Not that I've ever been aware of. Were we on PIBA prior? Not that we can find. And looking back, should we have had incremental increases all along? Yes, but it's hard to give incremental increases when 11 out of 17 years, no employee got raises. So effectively, you'd be cutting employees' pay, which is probably the difficult decision council faced at that time. And it may not be specific PIBA. I mean, when we take it quote unquote to market, there's an evaluation committee. There'll be a lot of Q&A when we go out to get those prices in the market. There'll be some comparability scales that have to be researched, and we do have someone that is assisting us that has a lot of experience in this field.
What's that stop loss about?
Sir,
What's that stop loss about?
our stop loss current, 80. It went up to 85. That's right.
It used to be 50.
It was 85 last year, and then before that it was 70. And then several years ago, I believe it was 50.
And the cost of healthcare, as you all know, I mean, it's beyond a controlled cost.
I say move forward and present it to council.
Green check mark on that page. Thank you, Jennifer. Airport improvement grant funding. So Oconee County Regional Airports, extensive grant funding opportunities over the next few years. None of those are guaranteed. If you'll look on the next page, I've already done this, so that's why I'm skipping to your next page. There's a small chart. I put in the current draft budget in front of you, the funding for the $170,000, which is a 2.5% grant match on a $6 million project. If you can spend 2 pennies to get $1 all day, every day, that's a good deal. Doesn't mean we're going to get this grant. So if the grant does not come through and there's slowdown at the federal government level for processing or whatever, we're not guaranteed the grants, even though we have applied for and have received. You can go to the next stage of approval. It doesn't mean we're gonna get them. So if that money is unexpended, and that is on your airport page in your budget, that money will go back to fund balance. It will not be utilized for anything else. The capital improvement plan portion for the airport, I thought that might be a good tool for y'all to have. I realize it's small. I did print you note pages, but this will be on full scale on the backup materials.
Can we use ATAX money for the airport?
We cannot use it as grant match. The FAA requires the local match to be of local origin, of local tax origin. I did look into that. Now, Mr. Shirley's here. We've talked about the potential for us using ATAX funds to build a park near the airport. I don't have a solid enough plan to get into detail with that with y'all, but it is something we have discussed.
And that would be great, use ATAX money.
And who doesn't want to eat ice cream at the airport?
And the one they have in Greenville, I've never been to it, but it's huge.
Oh, it's so
Everybody loves
nice. Pickens has an ice cream shop at their airport. It's called The Scoop.
It used to be in downtown Sitzmont. I think it moved to the airport.
Oh, I didn't know. I could see the appeal of being at the airport.
I mean, I went to the airport the other day. I had a delay just to try to see a plane take off, so.
Yeah, I heard.
Kids will love it, have a playground by the airport. And that way it's the airport, nothing more tourism than the airport. It also gives the local residents enjoyment of the airport.
And there is the option for us to put it on the western side of the airport campus, so there would be no interference with planes coming or going, vehicles coming or going, or shuttle buses coming and going during football weekends.
Speaking of airport, just, I wanna give a plug, so we had to get a vehicle repaired, so we kinda like shared a vehicle, I had to go pick Kate up and the kids at school, and I got there a little bit early, so I decided to go to the airport to see if I could see a plane take off. There was not a parking spot in there, and there was all out-of-state tags too. And, so I asked it, and asked the question, I said, it's all Clemson students going home on spring break, driving there and parking and find out, but it was, I had to park in the grass, there was no parking.
Yes, the airport parking area, and we'll go over that, I've redone some of our fees as well. If we have a waiting list, there's great demand. So within the current draft budget that you have, there is the 170 in the airport.
We've had pretty good success of getting those grants, have we
We do.
been rejected recently?
No, we don't get rejected, but it's really weird because like, so when they do the AIP, which is the Airport Improvement Plan, we submit it to the FAA, they'll say, okay, well, you're only eligible for one project in the next 3 years. And we have to go in order that they approve it, which is why I gave y'all this. This is a great tool for the years we're gonna go. Randomly, you'll get an email that says, okay, you can be awarded tomorrow, but you have to provide a letter of matching funds. I don't know if it's each ADO, each airport district, has a set amount of funds that they're allowed to send out in their own district. You know, so our ADO is in Atlanta. If they don't spend all the money by the end of a certain term, they may be able to utilize it again. Or if another airport was offered the money and was unable to provide the matching grant funds, they may be able to pull that back and then reallocate it back out. I like to think that we're a favorite, but I mean, that's just personal preference.
I think it's smart to have it in the budget, if we get it, it's budgeted, we don't have to do an amended budget. We had problems a few years ago doing amended.
We did.
So it's
And that was difficult for us too, because we were told at that time we were completely ineligible. Not you can apply, we were told you cannot even apply. And then within 30 days, we applied and got the grant, which is very unusual.
Does this pertain to possibly building hangars?
No, sir, this will not. This is simply,
It says layouts.
it does say layouts, but if you look at the first one up here, that's just for the plans. It does not mean the construction component. Now, we are working on some things that at this time I'm not able to share publicly for the potential for some hangar space. Privately, absolutely.
You said there was gonna be an adjustment made, or are we looking at fees and stuff on hangar? I had somebody bring to my attention the other day that's a newer pilot. He said he's keeping his plane in Pickens because there's no hangar space. And he mentioned that, there are a good many hangars over there that don't have planes in them. They have stuff stored in them because it's cheaper than getting a storage unit. So there's some that have lawnmowers and stuff like that. Is there any way that we could implement some kind of thing where they're actually used for
We do.
one?
The one with storage in it is is a gentleman named Jim Anderson. The county is utilizing it for storage. The reason we're utilizing it for storage is our storage building on the other side of where the self-service fuel tanks are has dilapidated flooring. We can't put that heavy of a piece of equipment in it. So there's a jet tug in it, 2 lawnmowers, a scud. I'm not sure what a scud is. But that particular hangar is A1, and it belonged to Mr. Jim Anderson. He recently sold his plane. That hangar is, so all hangar spaces is governed by FAA if it was built with any kind of federal funding whatsoever. So we do monthly inspections. But while we're talking about the airport, one of the things I want council to consider, and I've talked to Jeff about this extensively, your friend lives here and has a plane in Pickens hangar. I believe that we should prioritize Oconee County-based planes and let them move up on the waiting list first. If their plane is registered here and they're paying their taxes here, they should be first priority on that waiting list.
Do they pay their taxes here, or do they pay where it's hangared?
Airplane taxes are a strange thing. Your plane has to be on the ground at midnight on 11/31 or 11/59 on 12/31.
Ms. Herbert has,
If it's in a personal name, then they pay the county in which they reside, which they claim legal residence. If it's in a business name, they pay at Sidus.
And on
And if they're not
11/56 on New Year's Eve, a lot of planes are heading to Delaware because Delaware doesn't charge airplane taxes.
But all of ours pay, the ones that are in LLCs now,
Yeah.
that are here, as far as I know, unless any news come in. We fought that battle years ago, but they pay here.
But I think they should move up on priority.
while we're talking about planes, I don't see it's in here, so I wanna mention it now. And I know Ms. Herbert's been lobbying the bill that's in the legislature about boats and motors. If that's passed, that's gonna have a significant impact on county operations. There's been rumor that it may pass and go into effect mid-year, January, right?
Which would be the beginning of a calendar year.
Mid-budget year. And I think you're kind of anticipating that in this budget?
We're anticipating that, yes, but the SCAC sent out notice today of what it may look like if there's no registration require of the motor, and 50% reduction on the boat. I had to fact check myself real quick because it just came today. And its economic impact is greater to us than we previously anticipated.
So it's,
So we may want to, I mean, this is still a draft, but I may want to go back and look at how this changes over the next couple of weeks.
I think it's important to note, for the public to note, that it's not a tax decrease. It may be a tax decrease if you're on a boat, but what it is, it shifts the tax burden around.
And this probably is just the beginning.
The plan as of right now is for it to be a ratchet down over 3 years. So in the assessed values for,
Microphone. Ms. Hubbard.
so it was just in Ways and Means, and I think it got a favorable report from a text I just got. And at this time, if it is passed, it will be ratcheted down over 3 years. So next year, it would be at a 9% ratio, which we have that factored in the county and school value of a mill. But we may need to add just slightly a little bit less, because if they don't require the registration or titling of motors, which I think that will get added back in, because if not, DNR will not have any protocols to find one if they're stolen or anything like that. So we just chose to put the 9% in the boat assessment this year.
That's great news, though, the ratcheting.
Yeah.
Over 3 years.
One question, is 2025 a reassessment year?
I think the date is 12/31, was it 24?
Yeah,
Tw-
implementation 25.
25, but
We
we,
won't see it until 2026, 27.
because we delayed a year prior to.
So I've spoken with Representative Duncan about this. I don't think I spoke with Whitmire. I talked with Whitmire about how they was talking about the income tax. But we only have 3 legislators in Oconee. But I encourage each one of us to reach out to them to let them know the effect that it's gonna have on us, so they can, put their weight and influence for our interests, down there in Columbia.
I was talking to another Ways and Means Committee member, not from McCounty County. He was telling me they're kicking around for next year, either lower property tax or doing away with property tax. There's all kind of movement right now in the House to do away with taxes,
Well,
just like the income tax.
I mean, there's no hidden joke that Act 388 needs to be looked at. If the legislators had listened to the county officials back in 2007 and not made the school tax credit 100% of the operational millage, we wouldn't be where we are today. but they didn't listen, and we're here where we are. I tried to explain to them that property taxes is a three-legged stool. When you cut an inch off one of it, it unbalances it, which means you're gonna have to add something somewhere else to fill that void.
I think we're all for low taxes, but when it's marketed as a tax cut and it's not, it's just a redistribution. A reshifting of responsibility, I guess.
Money's gotta come from somewhere.
And it's essentially, I mean, a luxury tax, you know, a luxury tax cut. Most people don't take boats to work. And we still have vehicles on the road, personal vehicles at 10.5%.
If they were gonna look at boats, they should have looked at RVs also. You got an RV, you
They're
registered
probably
in
not far
Montana,
behind.
In Oconee County, our RVs are on at 6%.
or 6%. A lot of folks register them in Montana where it's 0.
We've included the RV language in the provisos as well.
I do think that will come statewide before it's over with, but it will not be a fiscal impact to Oconee County when it comes.
So we have autonomy, how we assess RVs? So we can assess it at a lower rate than other counties?
The auditor is to accept an application every year for them to be put on at 6%. The previous auditor made the decision that we would put all RVs that had latrines and kitchens in them on at 6%, and so we've just followed suit for the last several years. Because once you go 6, you can't go back. I mean, that was the decision.
Okay.
Joe, our impact for what we reflect in this budget does not meet what came from the state today, but if that text was more recent than what came from the state, that's great news, because then we're in par.
Yes,
Okay.
we're in par with our
Okay.
assessment.
That's good. Just want to make sure if we need to make another cut. Any more discussion regarding airport improvements? I got here, build a park, buy an ice cream shop. Oh yeah, extend some taxiway space. Okay, increased oversight of county funds. This one is coming at a perfect time. As you all probably saw on the front page of the newspaper a couple of weeks ago, actually I believe it was last week, we did have a county employee that was arrested and charged with breach of trust and illegal use of public funds. In the recent days, we have discovered one more. We need to ratchet down, ratchet down, ratchet down. Luckily for us, both of these are prosecutable, and the sheriff's office is working very closely with us to do so. But in making this budget while doing the documentation and research for these other 2 incidences, it occurred to me the county provides a little more than $1.5 million in third-party funding to fire departments, rescue squads, other vital nonprofits. All of these are very important to the county, but we don't require a whole lot of documentation or reporting back, which shame on us as public funds. So my recommendation here is to require all agencies to provide a Secretary of State nonprofit status if they are nonprofit, submission of a recent IRS Form 990, which is their nonprofit application and documentation, an audit or a banking statement, and for us to create a certification of use of county funds. So, Mr. Mize, if you are a nonprofit or a rescue squad, and you come to me and say, I need $17,000, and I say, okay, this checks out, you put it on paper of $17,000, I want us to do some kind of tracking. Was it spent on that? Do we have documentation of that? And provide like almost a closeout document for the use of those funds. The last portion of that is to transfer an existing full-time county employee to the 2.9 fund, which is where most of the money comes from. This employee, the reason the importance for doing a transfer of an existing employee is that employee already knows our financial policies and procedures for purchasing. So that would be no change in the employee status, it would just be paid for out of a separate fund.
So that would be on an annual basis.
Yes, daily,
Okay.
yes.
I'm talking about if the audit process.
So the auditing process is going out When's that, Tronda's not in here. Anybody know when that RFP is going out?
It went out Monday.
Okay, the auditing process for the new auditor went out Monday. I knew it was coming this week, so I approved a list of people to evaluate. But all of these things would go within to that. But what it also means is we've got somebody on a regular and routine basis that it's their job to do nothing but that. Because at $1.5 million spent in $80 increments is a lot of transactions. $1.5 million in getting fuel or purchasing oil or providing materials. That's a lot of money. And it can be in $2 increments or it can be in $10,000 increments. But the important part is that we have somebody that knows the financial side and the procurement side so that we're not starting from scratch teaching them the county way. And then all the funds coming through there would be documented almost like as a grant. We wouldn't do quarterly reports because sometimes I think that could be burdensome. But if it's a one-time expenditure, it can be a one and done. Hey, here's the receipt for this. This is what it was used for. That person signs off and says, yes, this was within procurement and county guidelines. And that one's completed and now can put into the box for the auditor to review at the end of the year. Yes, Mr. Hott.
This is gonna apply to the 50,000 that all the volunteer fire departments get
Yes, sir.
to?
And that's what that staff member's there for. So if a fire station, say someone from South Union comes in and says, I need new turnout gear, that staff person is gonna get online and look and say, okay, what size do you need? What color do you want? Here it is. Here's your receipt. I'll have it shipped to you. They need some help getting supplies and necessary materials. Now, I do think, and I haven't finished working on that component of the budget, I do believe that there should be an upfront cost simply for fuel and station supplies. I think we're gonna run it in the ground if we don't give some sort of funding for station, like upfront station supplies and fuel. So if they're driving their vehicles and we say, okay, we have to bring me a receipt every time you get fuel, they're running back and forth to Pine Street, or we're gonna end up buying scanners and providing internet all over the place. So I think there does needs to be some way that we look at how the fuel works, because that is an operational expense. And nobody knows how many miles they're gonna drive in 1 day or 2 days or 5 days. Procedurally, I will bring that back to y'all for a review. I mean, once I get council approval on this, I also wanna go out into the community and work with those fire stations and our rescue squads, because our rescue squads don't have any admin help either. None.
So I really wish we could find a way when funding, let's say the volunteer fire stations, to fund appropriately, because a station that's running a ton of calls and a station that's not responding at all, it doesn't make sense that they receive the equal amount of funding.
You're correct.
I don't know how you do it. If you tie it to call, then do you have a bunch of people just showing up to call if you add numbers? I don't know. Or if you just take I don't know. I've racked my brain trying to come up with a way.
That's the only way to do it, be on a call basis, but then you'd have to validate that too. Like you said, some of them will pad numbers.
Or do you do it a percentage of, if you answer different thresholds or percentage of response rate, you get X amount of dollars, and we set a high percentage response rate to get 100%. And then down, and then what it would do too, if you just say you designate that pool of money, the ones who respond more, then maybe they could get more, because they're using up more resources and capital, and the ones who aren't, they get less. Versus stations who aren't responding, getting the money and just stacking up in a bank account.
And that does happen. And so if you look at just by the call, we have a volunteer incentive now, where the individual gets the volunteer incentive pay, and we try to equalize it out per type of call, or per type of required experience for the call you were going on. Like, there's no reason for me to go on search and rescue. I'm not going to find the person. I'm not going to be able to drag them out. So I shouldn't get the same equal pay as Mr. Root if he's going in the woods with a gurney. So we did kind of establish some parameters there as far as like the incentive side, but going back to the district side is very hard. Percentage-wise would probably be the most equitable way to do it.
I think if we could set up metrics of,
Who is our busiest volunteer station?
Rescue One, Utica. They have 110 response. I don't know how they do it. Don't know how they do it.
and I don't know if percentage is right either, because made up numbers here. One district may have 100 calls a year, and they hit 90%. Another district may have 500, they hit 75%. Well, they're still responding to more, you know.
Right.
I don't know if everybody else don't mind, give that some thought, and come up with a solution.
And I think the advantage of having a model set up like this where, and we used to do it years ago. We had all rural fire station funds stayed here. Over the course of a period of time, I don't know how we shifted, but it did. The advantage to doing that is having that person in the office, say, Mr. Elliott calls and says, hey, I want to order 4 air packs and 2 turnout gears. And then she can say, wait, Station 11 needs turnout gear. Probably cheaper to buy 6 at a time. I mean, there's some advantages there that would provide some consistency countywide too. Or providing, hey, who bought the last window unit air conditioner and did it work well? I mean, just being able to provide that communication in a centralized place, not to mention the savings that it would result to the stations and to the county. All right.
Have you provided some of these methods that you're talking about to the school district?
This one comes from a series of really long meetings and a lot of care and commitment from your local Oconee County Humane Society Volunteer Organization Board. So the Community Cat program is handled entirely by the Humane Society, and y'all have funded that in the past as an extra line item. I did not know until meeting with them over the last several months that Oconee County, we don't touch a cat. All cats that come in, we drop off on the Humane Society's side of the building. The county does not manage, house, medicate, adopt, transfer out. County doesn't touch them. Well, of course, the Humane Society came and requested an increase in their funding for this year for their cat program. Once I learned that we don't touch the cats at all, the first thing that jumped out to me is the county reaps the revenues of the cat adoptions, which doesn't seem entirely fair for all the people who work very hard to get those cats adopted out, and we don't touch them in the first place. We're like, here's a cat, you adopt it, you take care of it, you make sure it gets on Facebook or wherever, and then we're gonna keep the money. So instead of us funding that community cat line item as we had in the past, my proposal, and this does reflect in this draft budget, remember we got delayed, so I did make some of these changes, but they're easy to fix if you don't wanna keep them, is for us to allow for all cat adoption fees to go as direct aid to the Humane Society. The more cat adoptions they get, the more increased funding they get. The county doesn't touch the cats in the first place. It doesn't seem very fair that we keep the money and then reduce the funding they're allowed to receive from those adoptions if they're the ones driving the car behind the adoption. This year, that would be an increase of $5,400 in the proposed budget here, which is about a 25% increase for them. They were looking at a 15 to 20%, so it's a win-win. Various notations. So this was discussed earlier when y'all were discussing the school district's budget about this slight decrease, because we are seeing some increase in 4% residents and a slight decrease in the 6%. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily changing hands. It might mean that I had a 6% home and now I'm gonna retire here and I'm converting it to a 4%. It's not a lot, it's just a matter of notation. Y'all can scratch the part where the watercraft taxes. Christy had a more updated version of information for that. And if they ratchet that down, that will be a lot easier for counties to manage. So I just would want to make this notation too. There is no anticipated millage increase in general fund budget. There are no new positions in general fund budget, but there are some shifting of positions, and great news that we are able to fund a law enforcement officer out of ATAX funds, which means there's no county tax dollars going toward that salary or that first year required equipment for that. Sheriff and Mr. Shirley met, it's been a while back that it was discussed the first time, but after learning of some changes at the CVB, Phil and I met, was that last week or this week? Feels like yesterday. Yeah, it was last week. To look at what that impact to the A-tax or L-tax money might look like, and he and the sheriff met yesterday or day before, discussed this. This is a monumental thing, to have an additional law enforcement officer for no tax dollars involved. The other one is the conversion of temporary to permanent, full-time for PRT as well, and the transfer of the operations manager, which we discussed for the oversight of the county funds. The appetite for the option to do a lease purchase for some solid waste equipment, I don't think I'm ready to bring that, but if there is an appetite for that, I will get staff to start working on what that might look like. I don't think we'd be ready to do anything like that until probably September, October. We do have 2 large pieces of equipment in the proposed budget for solid waste, but there are still some measures that have to be taken as far as the required equipment for solid waste management. And then y'all have any other discussion matters or questions on this portion of what we discussed?
I'd like to add one to this various. And
Yes.
I mean, you talked about it, and you'll have to explain it, because I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but apparently the county is a pass-through, we pay bills for municipalities, do we not?
No, sir, we don't pay bills for them.
What was it, man, you were talking about that? And I mentioned that we charge them a handling fee.
To administer their taxes.
Correct.
Yes. So we do all tax assessments and collections, which includes our 2 special fire districts and all 4 municipalities. So essentially, and both the auditor and treasurer here, if y'all like a demonstration. So I come in and pay, I live in City Wahala. I come in and pay my taxes, my county tax, my city tax is both on one bill. Monthly by the 15th of the month. Okay, just want to make sure I was right. 15th of the month, we issue those monies back out to each of the municipalities based on the apportionments on the tax bills.
Is that how it's done in all 46 counties? Or does anybody bill the city's bill separate?
I'm not aware, but I'm very new.
I don't know of any. Now, I do know of counties that charge fees for administering municipal taxes.
I think we need to implement a handling fee for that, because that's an administrative duty somebody has to do.
It's a task, actually, because we have to look at each and every tax notice that comes in.
Thank you, sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, my office especially, and Nick.
Yes,
in
GIS.
GIS. He and I work together because we have to look at every single tax notice that comes in from the state, the DNR, DMV, and we have to go through each and every one address and code them appropriately for each taxing district that comes in. So with Corinth Shiloh coming on, it will be a larger task this year because I won't have a district to match it to from the prior year. And even the ones that we match prior to, we have to look at those closely as well because people move. So I can't just arbitrarily put the same district on it every year. So it is a task that we have to look at for every single tax notice that goes out.
Seems like a large burden.
It is, and then once we get the dollars, we have to apportion it, and that's when it affects the treasurer and finance. And just to make sure that all the money's coming in, and, any refunds that we do, we have to make sure that, that's apportioned back out and everything. So it is a task.
How do you evaluate that cost, for a fee? I mean,
Come back.
Right now, any penalties that come, that are added to a tax notice that is late, then the county keeps the town's portions of that. But for boats and motors, there are no penalties there. So on my boat notices, you know, we got 17,000 a year, and then on the boats, on the vehicles, we got about 85,000 a year. So if they are late, then we get nothing for that. And then as far as, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but as far as the number of city taxes that go delinquent, there's really not that many. When we rolled the other day, I think out of the 70,000 tax notices that we sent out in the fall, 9% rolled delinquent. So probably maybe a third of those have got city tax on them. But for the fire districts, we don't get anything whatsoever for doing that.
So would you just pass a fee to the districts and the cities as a whole, or would you have a per resident fee per bill? How would that work?
I think we would just have to poll other counties to see how that goes, but, just something to throw off the top of my head, $1 per notice. Just something, I don't know, we'd have to look at it, see where we're at on the penalties and things like that. You gotta think about, not only are we doing the work for them, we are also putting a stamp on it, paper, envelope. If it comes back, we do return mail, we send out change forms, anything that's changed sometimes is, double, triple mailed. And I believe July 1, postage is going up again.
It is.
I have a recommendation. Of course, the cities may not like this, but we ought to swap that service for fire service, and then we'd let everybody break even.
Either that, or how much they charge you when you swipe your debit card? 3.5%?
2.5 plus 30 cents right now. It's gonna go down to 2.35, hopefully.
Microphone?
Sorry.
That's okay, we're on the record. I'm helping Jen. Thank you.
So right now, you're at 2.5 plus 30% per transaction fee. I'm hoping that's gonna go down with this new company. We're gonna be 2.35. So in my mind, that's kind of what I'm thinking, because people are used to paying about that much when they use their debit card.
Restaurants charge
Yeah.
more than that.
Yeah,
They charge like 3.5
Right.
when you swipe it.
so.
But I think these agreements were made in the early 70s, and they've not been looked at since then. I have copies of them if you need them.
I'd love to see them.
Okay.
I think we're too late in this budget cycle to change it, since cities and everybody's already setting their budgets, but if it's something we're gonna do, we need to have the discussion and notice early next year,
It'd be a target for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna keep up with that, Mr. Mize, for next year's discussion. And what we'll do, if y'all don't mind, things that come up throughout the course of the year that I know that we'll forget by the time we get around to strategic plan next year, I'll keep a running tab of things just to bring back for consideration, for strategic plan. Okay, PowerPoint complete. Anybody had any other thing to add to that? Any discussion item to go with that?
I have a little something, I hope it's very short. What about these weekend rentals? How are we gonna get taxed on that?
We do. That's accommodations tax. We use a company called Host Compliance.
I know it, but how many of these people don't report it though?
We're in the 90-some odd percentile.
I talked with Noah Baker, who spoke with Mr. Shirley, and this software that crawls internet is pretty impressive.
I didn't hear your original question, if you could go back to that. How do we capture?
How do we capture this money from these weekend rentals?
So all of our finance has a software that we purchased in 2018, 2019, called Host Compliance. And if they market their property through anything online, we've got a geofence around the county, and we get notified for that. And that triggers a letter to them welcoming them to the lodging industry and showing them how to become compliant. So that process has got us, we feel like we're probably 95+% compliant there. If you, or if the Shirley's on a house and I don't use the internet and I'm just say, hey, I got a house, if you want to rent it, those may be flying under the radar, but if you're using any technology at all, we're pretty much capturing that.
And it works. Somebody I know, he said, hey, I got a notice or a bill or something. He said, how do they know I have that? So, because if you look at the revenue increase and we're still using that software, it's,
Oh, yeah.
That's how we're doing all of our projects. I mean, that's, yeah,
And paying for the officer
and paying for the officer and different
and the
things.
capital upgrades that most of the big grants, and, I mean, it's huge.
I know it's one individual's complaining about it, so I'll ask if they if they knew that they were advertised, and then I'll know that it's
Oh.
been taken care of then.
well, it
It's
forces
advertised,
people
we
to
find
be
it.
fair and honest and keep a level playing ground versus somebody paying it and being upfront and somebody else trying to hide it, you know, it equalizes it.
Okay. So I made a couple of changes to this year's fee schedule, and I do want to go over that. I don't want to hold y'all hostage, but there are a couple of changes based on some discussions we've had. Should have put these in your books, I'm sorry I didn't. Honestly, I didn't page number them, so I didn't know where they went.
I think I found it because I found the blank page that were fee schedules
There,
again.
you should have a tab for fee schedules, but I didn't know. I'm just a little behind there. There are no significant changes, for anything that is consistently in black font. The only things that are changed are in red. So I'm just gonna go over the changes unless y'all wanna do a step by step by step. Long-term parking at the airport, $10 a month increase. Mr. James, I know you had a question about hangars, about the rental for the hangars. The condition of the old T hangars doesn't really warrant us an increase in those. Now, we built larger, newer hangars, so some of the hangars, you know, they've got the groove in the ground where the doors slide open this way. You literally have to take like oil or the age of some of the hangars just doesn't warrant for us to do that sort of increase. Provided we have people paying county tax on airplanes, we believe that holding the hangar where it is okay. The second page, building codes. This one has some new things added to it and some increases. So all buildings, demo, mechanical and trades, $10,000 or less, the fee of now $75. I want y'all to keep in mind when we do a fee increase, it's not to increase the revenues, we're not trying to make money. After we went through the staffing study last year, what we did was calculate how long it takes an employee to do certain tasks. So the county shouldn't be in the red for $45 for an activity. Does that make any sense? So if you're gonna do a permit and I have to drive to Salem, I'm using a vehicle, fuel, county insurance, and I'm paying this person their hourly rate. So we're trying to make them a little bit more equitable based on the cost of service. So some of our fees, I skipped one on the print and the map, voting precincts and councils on the top.
What's that, just somebody wants a printout?
Yes, for the large one. So the ag buildings for any demolition mechanical trade, 10,000 or less, we increased to $75 versus the 50. I wish I had had previous years' fees on here. If y'all want to, I can research these so y'all can see when the last time a fee increase took place. If the current year is black, it means that it did not change from prior year. Set up for manufactured homes, moving to 125, as those do now require at least 2 inspections. They come with 4, but typically the tie down or the underpinning is an additional inspection required there. The setup fee for the permit for the county decal, which is the sticker, which we require for all mobile homes, the cost of the stickers went up.
Do you have to get a decal every year?
Yes. You're supposed to.
Are mobile homes taxed or assessed at 4% or 6%? They left.
It depends. So whether they're tied down, made a fixture to the land and a permanent residence, then they get 4%.
And
So if
moving
it's still got
permits.
the wheels on it, it's still
Could be. So then there's a whole, I don't wanna go in deep dive in it, but it ties back to the campers and motorhomes and, you know, these building structures that have living accommodations can get secondary or primary residence tax treatment. So with that one, with the tie down, or not being tied down, it's not considered real property, but I'm assuming you could still work it on a personal property 4%. But I'm kind of shooting from the hip.
And moving permits, $125, again, just to cover the cost increase that it does incur on the county. Stop work order and placard placements. The stop work order is for a building codes violation, say that they were building a deck and they needed a 4x4 and all they have there is a 1x1. We're gonna put a stop work order. Nobody should be on this deck or on this property. The placard one is for code enforcement signs. So when we go out and there's a property that is a clear violation of codes enforcement. And so, y'all, please keep in mind, we don't go out looking for things to placard. But if there is a structure or a building, for instance, one recently that had been previously burned, we placarded that thing 4 times, and every time we went by there, they'd take it down. So we want to add fees for every time we have to go out there and re-placard it. Thank you so much. So the one time is one time, but if you take it down and you decide you're gonna go stay in the structure anyway, we have to go back out there because it's placarded, it's got a notice on it. We wanna up that fee to $300. The $300 is not a cost factor fee for us. That's what we found from the municipalities, when they go and re-placard something else. So we wanted to be consistent across the county with placarding for structures. Mr. Hart, you have a question?
No,
Okay, I saw you.
just a flea.
I brought the bugs in. Delinquent tax collector, flipping the page again, we're only going over what's in red unless anybody else has a question. Second cost for the delinquent tax is that we do have to add the posting fee of $50. It's a $10 increase. Continuing on, skipping a page, we are now looking at planning.
Can we back up that delinquent tax?
Yeah, absolutely.
I see the first cost, second cost, third and fourth, and it goes 10, 50, 100, and then drops to 40.
The third cost, I think, is where the title stuff is added in. Am I right?
I'm not sure how she parses that out, but that would make good sense.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Posting?
I would expect the fourth cost to be a little bit more.
I'm happy to increase the fee, sir.
I'm saying it progresses.
Yes, you're right. There may be a function of the fourth cost just being, hey, that's your final notice and now we're done.
Could be the approaching end of redemption period, which is just a letter, versus the third one could be
Right.
posting.
Third
the
one is
property.
posting, I bet.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, but that would make sense.
I'm happy to ask that too. Okay, again, skipping the PRT page because there are no changes there. Now we're moving on to the planning page. The basic plat review per parcel is moving to 50 from 25. And the significance here is in the middle of the page. So we've broken out preliminary plan reviews by number of units. These are significant by number of units because the cost of doing the preliminary plan reviews and the time it takes to do them. Because each one of these large, say, apartment complex, a commercial unit in the bottom or a residential on top, and we're getting more requests for those. So we're looking at increasing those fees because of the time it takes for the turnaround there. And on the bottom, taking group homes from $750 to $1,000 to make sure that when we do those reviews, we are looking at DHEC compliance as well and increasing the sexually oriented business. Not that I believe that's gonna bring any different sorts of businesses to Oconee County, but we wanna make sure that when we do, they're paying for their review fees. Am I going too fast? Okay.
The plat reviews and stuff, are we getting that ahead of time now?
Yes. If you'll notice here on the bottom, we made an ordinance revision. No reviews shall begin until all fees are paid.
Are we seeing either one, an increase in revenue from that, or two, a decrease in people just asking us to look at stuff?
Mr. Coley, would you like to approach?
I'm being joined by my friends today. I like it.
So for plat reviews,
Ooh, I
they've
lit.
continued to go up. So we're still seeing more plat reviews than we saw every previous year since I've been here. It's about 50% are exempt, just roughly. With subdivisions, since the change in the control-free district, we're actually seeing smaller subdivisions. It kind of coincides with the fee increase on the larger subdivisions as well. So it could be a product of either one. But our subdivisions went from 100, 200, 300 to 30, 40, 60, which is a pretty significant change in the number of total units. And we still have a pretty good backlog of subdivisions that have the smaller lots, the 6,000 and 7,000 square foot lots that are in phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. That'll still be coming online for the next couple of years as well.
How long is somebody, I don't wanna say grandfathered in, but once you get, what do you call it when you get, standing?
Vested?
Vested.
Yeah.
How long is that good for? I mean, you vested forever until you build, or is there a time limit
So
it runs out?
once you get that county approval, that vesting is now standing, and then it would go through our attorney if there were any questions about how that vesting would eventually leave. But it would be a big burden to remove that vesting once it's actually approved and stamped, so.
And so
they
it
really
it
take
can
their
be
time
5
to
years
build it out.
before they,
Generally, you have a couple years. You have
Yeah.
2 years that they're, under the statute, you have 2 years, but it's very fact specific. So there's different type of government actions that make the permit vested, the approval vested, and it's a full spectrum. So it's a very fact specific. But if it is vested, it's generally 2 under statute. There can be common law vesting too, that can be re-upped for additional periods of time.
What does exempt mean?
For a plat, or for just,
Yes.
yeah, so for those plats, it could be that it's a family transfer, anything that's greater than 5 acres, as long as they're not building a new road. Combination of properties, so you're just taking out like a center lot line, all those things.
Let's pretend that I'm a surveyor and I put on there, this is exempt. What's the procedure if I hand it to a client and said, you can go record this?
Typically, they'll just ask us to make sure that it is actually exempt, so we'll come down and we'll just put a little check mark under it, exempt, and our initials and the time.
Now, if
that
it
we've
was to
confirmed it.
be approved, it would get a stamp, right?
Correct, wet stamp.
So the difference between exempt and a regular plat is a stamp, and exempt is a initial.
And a check mark.
Or it's also the fee, so it's exempt from fees, so we don't charge any fees for an exempt plat to review it. We still look at it, we still make record of it, but we only charge for the ones that actually get that wet stamp.
And now, I've got a friend that's a surveyor.
Me too.
And he called a county agency and told them he had an exempt plat. And they told him Oconee County does not have exempt plats anymore.
Well, that's not correct.
Well, he called me and asked me that, and I said, it didn't come through council. So, again, I'll talk with the agency and ask them about it.
Sure.
Was that recently?
Last week.
Okay.
In fact, you might have seen his wife walking down the hall with a plat in her hand.
I might not have, I was working on a budget. Had limited time hall walking last week, Mr. Hart.
We have lots of exempt plats that come through.
Well, I
And
understand
it
that.
might have been just a miscommunication with somebody, so that also happens too, and people bump into each other in the hallways and ask for help, and
Well, yeah, I understand, but still, I met her as I was going out, she was coming in, she had a plat in her hand. And I said, what are you doing up here? She said, my husband sent me up to get this plat approved. And in the course of that, he gave me a call and said that he talked with an agency here, and I won't say what department, and they said there's no such thing as exempt plats in Oconee County anymore.
Mr. Hart, what do they mean by exempt? Because it's still, it could be exempt, but it doesn't mean you can bypass planning before you have to record it. You still have to get that.
That's the reason I started my question off with what does exempt mean?
Sure.
Because, the attorneys, you take one end of them and they say, will you please get this approved for us? And I said, well, this plat's exempt. Well, it doesn't work that way with us. So, I mean, I don't know where it's the process of them sending it up. They don't wanna have to send it up and have the little check mark put on it or what. But they asking me to take care of that for them.
I got you.
But anyway, I'm glad, I wanted to ask that
Yeah, absolutely.
2 weeks ago.
I'm glad we got to talk.
The reason I have a brochure that was done in 2007 that lists all the exemptions. And, pretty little brochure, it folds out, Oconee County signature all over it.
Great.
But that answered my question. We'll go over.
So you said since we passed the density standard restrictions, whatever, we've seen a decrease in applications?
So the number of applications hasn't really changed. It's stayed pretty steady. We had more applications last year than the year before. But the total number of units in those applications has, on average, gone down.
Should we not have a category 1,000 units or more?
Yes,
Indeed.
I can add a category.
I think that'd be a lot more work on 1,000 units or more, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. All right, adding in. For preliminary and for subdivision. Yeah. Preliminary and final. We'll just marry those together. Okay.
Good thought.
Yes, moving on to our next page. This one's probate. There's a change in state statute that lowers the, reforming or correcting a marriage license. At one time, I believe they allowed up for probate to determine that, but there is a state statute governing that now. So if they misspelled your name, Mr. Elliott, they forgot one of your L's. We can only charge you
I need to
$6.75
check on that.
for your new L. Signage fee, going on to the next page, mid-page, I put $40 at material cost, simply because of that thing where we're trying to make sure that we are covering the cost of doing business. This is only for the municipalities. We've kept the 2.0 times the material cost the same for residences or commercial. But for the municipalities, and all of this are basically within similar pay ranges, so I believe that would not have a negative impact on them. Last page is the solid waste. I don't have the Corey piece. Is it in the book on the fee schedule?
It was the second page by itself.
I bet I didn't include it in mine. I don't have the Corey fees with me. Can we print a copy?
Yes.
We'll go over these solid waste fees. So the transfer station out of county, we need to go to $95 per ton. As you all know, we contract with Waste Management to haul our waste to the R&D landfill. They are allowed CPI increase plus a fuel surcharge. At the rate we're charging at $85 a ton, we're not covering 100% of the cost of managing and handling the waste. This is not trying to gouge anyone. This is simply for us to try to recover the cost of operations. And as you all know, when the waste comes in from the trucks, it's put on the floor, so it's like a big concrete floor. Well, we manage what's on that floor. We run over and try to compact it before we put it into a compactor unit itself. One, that compactor unit is using a ton of electricity. Two, we're using equipment and manpower to get it squished down before we put it in the compactor. Then we have another solid rubber tire loader. That is So we're now we squished it, we ran over it, and then we put it in the compactor. Now we've got a different loader where we're forcing it back or separating it out depending on what that compactor unit can hold at one time. It's just the cost of managing 45,000 tons of waste a year. The recycling container fees, increasing that each additional pickup cost, so if they have a recycling container, we do offer the weekly pickup or 4 pickups per month or 8 pickups, but if you have to do a call-in pickup, we've increased that fee to $35, again, to cover the cost of the pickup. And the monthly container fee for metal and or recycling containers, because a lot of agencies, when they request a metal container, they have half of the container, so they want to hold on to the container longer so they can fill it up. Well, that container's sitting there, so we're increasing the fee on that because we're not making any changes with having the container sit at a business.
Well, man, I know at one time the welcome centers were using shredded tires as mulch.
Yes, sir.
Any market for if we put a shredded tires?
There are a multitude of markets for tires and tire recycling. I don't know if any of the welcome centers are. If they are, I don't believe they would be utilizing county recycled tires to do so.
There was a push towards that, now there's a turn away from it. Because a lot of people, a lot of studies says there's adverse health effects to it.
Yeah, and tires are very different. So, South Carolina made a mission to be #1 in tire manufacturing and met that mission hands down. Still don't have a tire recycling facility in the state. Still the second largest manufacturer of tires in the United States. Still don't have a statewide tire recycling program.
We do. The administrator of Pickens County will tell you that he is taking all the tires in from the whole state and having to pulverize them.
To pulverize them?
Yeah, because he said that he had counted how many tires was sold in Pickens.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
the numbers that he is having
Yeah.
to grind, he said, we're grinding them for Greenville County too.
I'm sure they are. So, every time you buy a new tire, I'm not gonna pick on any one company, but there's a local big box store that has an automotive department. In that big box store, if you buy 4 new tires, they put all your 4 old tires in the trunk of your car, and you don't know until you get back home. Thank you. Because you got a document with those tires, it's called an ST-390, and it says the taxes on those tires have been paid. Well, they get a copy of that ST-390 too, so they send it into the state and say, hey, we pay taxes on those tires. Well, then when I get home and I find my 4 used tires in the trunk of my car, all of a sudden, I gotta take them, which is why we have limitations on what we take at the convenience centers, and we do charge for tires. Because again, we were on a mission to be one of the largest manufacturers of this material. And once steel belts got introduced to tires, Mr. Hart, there are tires now that have steel belts in the walls, not just the tread portion. Recycling tires is dangerous and costly. And they're not all steel anymore. At least when it was a steel requirement, they were ferrous. You could pull them out with a magnet. Now you may find aluminum in a tire. You may find some sort of mixed metal,
Carbon fiber.
braided fibers. Yes. But if Mr. Roper in Pickens County would like to recycle any Oconee County tires, he has my number.
Well, I tell you what, he probably thinks he's already recycling.
I'm sure he is recycling a few of ours. I'm sure he is. Okay, so Corey, in and out of county rates, and we did keep some of the in and out of county rates for the rest of the solid waste materials. It was just for the MSW tipping fees, simply because we handle so much of that. We did not feel it would be fair to go up on the residential component because one, it would hurt some of the haulers that are now providing services to the many members that live outside of where the municipalities pick up. We're looking at some pretty levelized increases for a Corey product, again, in and out of county. The odd thing of Tom and Billy are not here this afternoon, and I did not ask them to come, so it's not that they're no-shows. They've had some trouble with some electrical components at the Corey, so I'd rather them be out there working on that. is that we are starting to see where the revenue is still exactly where it was before, and demand is died down a little bit on out-of-county sales. Now, we are currently holding, I hope I'm not wrong, Pea Gravel and Crusher Run for the King contract. It might be screenings we're holding, not Crusher Run. It's screenings for the King contract. That they use those to make asphalt. Every other product is available. And we are seeing that slow but good turnaround. They have had some significant electrical issues over the past several days, which means they've had some slow sales. But we do have another 2 months, couple days left in this budget year, and we're gonna make that 10 million mark easy.
I get less calls. I don't know if I get less calls when people gave up on it, or if.
I hope not.
Or if we've had, I mean, have we been able to have a stockpile for when it goes down?
It's been a lot.
Okay.
I also think, you know, and it goes a long way. We had a couple of gentlemen that were here, drivers that were here, I want to say 6 or 8 months ago. I spent a lot of time calling them back. I'm like, hey, let's ride out to the quarry. Talk to me about it. Let us figure out what you perceive this problem to be, and let's get together and talk about it. There's some structural things at the quarry that do and don't make sense. They don't make sense if you're looking at them from one perspective, but if you understand that wall is not gonna be there tomorrow, we can't build a road over there, we're gonna blast that all the way, then people start to be able to see it better. Also, sharing our blasting plan with people. So they're not sitting in their truck waiting to be loaded, looking like, well, nothing's happening right there. So like, hey, we can put a sign, this wall will be blasted next week, it's not stable right now, so. I mean, there's just some communication components, I believe, that we've improved on. The text messaging communication improvement, I think was probably the number one thing we've ever done at the quarry. When the quarry's down and we get the text message.
I did get one complaint last week.
Oh, no.
The gentleman wanted to know why at lunchtime they stopped the rock crusher and went to lunch, and the people loading went ahead to loading, but the crusher was sitting there for lunch.
It may depend on the number of people that are operating. If we don't have a certain number of people operating the unit when it's running, we have to shut it down. Like, you can't have 2 people working on the crusher. You have to have a certain number of people working it. I know one day last week we were short 7 or 8 employees in one day. I don't know if that was the day, but you know, the crusher, the unit itself, it has 7 belts, so, I mean, you gotta have enough people to work it. I mean, if there was only 2 people working it and one of them got squished, you'd never know it. So we do have a minimum number of people that has to be working the plant at one time. That may have been why. I don't know if that's why. But if you wanna give me the day, I'll find out.
Well, I'll have to ask the driver what day it was.
Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about fee schedule?
Yeah, on this, rock quarry, how did we derive these rates?
By cost. We have a formula, what it costs us to produce. And then, you know, there's a percentage increase for in and out of county.
Looks like it's roughly, out-of-county folks are paying roughly $3 more per ton
On some products.
on most products.
Like overburden, there's not a cost associated with that, so you see it's just pennies more. I mean, so they have a model and a formula that they run for the cost of production for certain materials. And if you'll see like the Class A, the riprap, that is the 2374 for the in-county credit or debit. That's exactly what it cost us to make it, $23.74. But because we do make some money on other products, we don't have a lot of demand for Class A riprap. That's the one we almost have to handle by hand. It doesn't go through a unit, it doesn't go through, there's a hair somewhere making me nuts.
So we've got a good system to track out-of-county purchases.
Yes. And remember when we did strategic plan and we had the chart for in and out of county and the records there? We're gonna keep that chart. We're gonna keep it rolling to see like, what was the 3-year impact? Because, you know, you make decisions and you can see results within the first calendar year, 18 months of doing it. But you won't have a long-term look at the impact of it until you get 3 years under your belt. You get 3 years under your belt and you say, hey, we didn't deplete the quarry at 31%. We depleted the quarry at 14%, and we still made this amount of money and had a residential preference. And it gives you time to look back and evaluate what the true impact is. Because 1 year's not a trend. I would take 5. Been sitting in your chairs for a few minutes.
We're supposed to wrap it up, or?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I thought I had till like 9. Ha ha.
He's going down to Faro.
Well, okay, so yeah, let's stop here. We do have a budget meeting Tuesday. There's some highlights I'll go over for the general fund, and the rest of the budget is balanced. That gives you all time to look through your books. If you have questions, concerns, or comments, you can either call, email. We can discuss them next week live in person. I do want y'all to pay special attention to the extra efforts put in specifically transportation, which means we're looking at equipment, looking at personnel, and looking at making a big difference in roads and bridges and culverts, and looking at your capital vehicle. We were able to hold that and get all 11 vehicles for sheriff's office. We're slowing down now on the capital vehicle, which is great. You know, every year that it has been funded, it's been short just this much for everything on the list. And of course now, you know, we are doing some turnover, sheriff's vehicles and fire and emergency services vehicles, those with super high mileage on them. Those get traded out first.
Question, the sheriff said he is going away from the Chevrolets, Tahoes. What is he going to?
We may be going to the Fords.
Okay, I was just curious, he said he's.
So we have, you know, we bought a couple of the Dodge Durangos last year. I don't know if y'all heard about me going down Highway 11 at 90 miles an hour accidentally. I didn't know it had a pursuit package, and it felt like you're riding on air, and I was going to that community breakfast at Blue Ridge, and I dropped my daughter off at school, and I looked down, I'm like, 80? Those things fly, the Dodge Durangos. On the flip side of it, I'm not the same size as most of the men and women who work in law enforcement, and I was not wearing any gear. They're tight. They're tight, getting in and out. There's not the same adjustability factor in those. And because it is pursuit, you know, the seats are harder. They don't have the nicer seats. So I believe they were looking at the Fords for those. I was just joking about 190, sort of.
I just wish to.
Breakfast with law enforcement?
Uh-huh.
You were safe, they was all that.
It was. One of the other things, just highlight, and I know and we will wrap up. We did put some extra funding in IT this year. I do want to give a huge shout out to all departments when we asked them to make adjustments to their budgets. We literally let them do it. Let them tell us what's important to fund or not fund, and where they know they're going to need that money, and where they know they can cut. Largest increases across the board, period, were utility and goods and services. A ream of paper years ago was $20, now it's $27.80. There's certain things we're looking at changing for efficiencies. I hate Gina's not here. One of the things we're talking about is click here to print your own receipt. We mail out tax receipts. That postage increase is almost $50,000 difference.
And click here or have it emailed to them.
Right.
Paying online, you
Right.
got email.
So y'all take your time, read your budget. Next, if I'd known you were taking them home, I'd have put some pictures in them for you. Sorry.
So the next budget meeting, I may or may not be here. I have to work with the training. If I can shift it around, I'll be here. If not, I'll meet with you
Yes, sir.
before Tuesday. Any questions I have,
Sure.
that I'll make sure that she relays that to everyone else.
And if there are questions for the group, I'm happy when y'all ask me the question or email it to me, to email that answer back out to everyone. And then we'll provide that as backup in the next meeting so that everybody knows everything.
Thank you, Ms. Brock.
Thank you.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.